Well, Micah, it's good to have you here today.
Yeah.
This is the first podcast that we've done, and so I'm excited for everybody to meet you, learn about you, and in this process that we have for recording this album.
Awesome. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about one of your songs today, My Song Forever.
Sweet.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited. Good to have you with us.
Well, thank you.
So, Micah, we have, over the last 3 years, it feels like an eternity, written a bunch of songs.
Yeah.
And most of which we did right in this room.
That's right.
So I'm excited for this project to come out, and we are actually going to talk a little bit later about the title track from the album, which is a song you wrote called My Song Forever.
Yeah.
And the project, just this week, we decided was going to be called Our Song Forever. So
It's crazy.
I'm excited
awesome.
to have you here. Yeah. So how do we know each other? How did you come to Parkwood, and how did we meet? And I think people will be fascinated by that story.
Yeah. So God saved me almost 9 years ago, 2011.
Yeah.
It's 2020. But so this whole process, God's changing me. Like 10 months later,
Yeah.
I start feeling the urge of Him calling me into ministry, but I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
So my now grandfather-in-law, who was our lead pastor,
Right.
he knew you. I don't know how he knew you, and he told me and my parents, like, hey, you should go to Parkwood one day and go check out this guy named Chad who leads worship. And at that time, I had no idea that leading worship was something,
Was a thing. Yeah.
because I just grew up in a different culture.
Yeah.
So me and my parents come here on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
It was before Parkwood was redone, right? So
Yeah, it's the Pink Church.
Yeah, pink Pepto-Bismol. Yeah,
Everything pink at Parkwood. Yeah.
So I just remember we're in the middle of the sanctuary, and I'm just mesmerized by the service, right? Because I never experienced a more modern type service at the time.
Sure.
And so afterwards, again, I had no idea what I was doing in life. So we just go up to you where the pulpit is.
Yeah.
You never met us ever. And I remember just asking the question, like, how did you get this job? I didn't know what that. And no joke, Chad, like at that moment, I feel like God was speaking through you to me. And you literally almost gave a blueprint as to what it looks like what you could maybe even go to Liberty, right? You could go to, you could do this and that. And leaving the church that day, I was like, wow. And I remember my mom, we sat in the car and she was like, I hope you know that God was just speaking at that moment through Chad.
Wow.
And
I'm humble.
yeah, so it was awesome. So I still fought with it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
and then eventually I was like, yeah, okay, Lord, I'll go. I'll do it for you. I'll serve you. And so then before I even signed up for school though, I contacted you because you gave me your email.
Yeah.
And so I came and shadowed you for a day.
Yes, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and loved it. Just loved the whole process of worship pastoring and stuff. So, so then went through school.
Yeah.
And
So I remember distinctly that we went over to the worship center after you shadowed, and I remember you singing for me. And I remember thinking there's a lot, and I'm going to say it, it sounds demeaning, but there's a lot of vocal in this kid, because you were young. And I was like, this kid's got something.
Well, thank you, man.
But I don't even think at that point, I don't think you played an instrument.
No.
I think I may have even said, you should learn an instrument and pick up something. And
you did. And even I remember at that time, because I still wasn't familiar with newer worship music.
Right.
We sang some in my other church, but I just wasn't in that world.
Yeah. And
so I remember, I think I sung Casting Crowns tune to you because that's the only thing I knew was kind of modern.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just, I know I couldn't thank you enough for personally how much you've poured in my own life. And even 2 days ago, I mean, you still helped me with so much stuff ministry wise. And so that's how I got affiliated with you.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later,
yes,
we're just months from me proposing to my now wife. She didn't know at the time, and I was in the process of I had like a year left of school.
Yep.
And I just didn't know. Again, I just needed to get my feet into something.
Right,
Like I didn't
right.
have any connections, so I'll try to get a few jobs or try to get a few other internships. It didn't work out, and I
Right.
just remembered it was like a January, and I remembered y'all had an internship at the time.
Yep, we did.
And so I just looked it up, and I was like, oh, it's still open. It's not
Yeah.
closed yet. So I sent it
Yeah.
in, and I remember getting like a Facebook message from you just saying like, hey, we got it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then you called me a few minutes later, and this, for some reason, you let me come.
You ended up on our staff team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're talking about too is something that I love to just shout out to. Pastor Jeff, years ago, our lead pastor, came to us and said that he really wanted Parkwood to become like a teaching hospital.
Right.
So what he laid out was basically the blueprint for ministry development that we still use today. It's got different parts to it, Great Commission team, and then it moves into internship. So it's got more layers to it.
Yeah.
But you were basically one of those people who came through ministry development.
That's right.
And so I remember you stayed here. It was supposed to be for a summer, and then you stayed into the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point in that process, the Kings Mountain campus that we had planted, the worship leadership position came open.
Mm-hmm.
So you went to Kings Mountain. I thought to myself, he's from Bessemer City, so he understands the culture.
Yeah, and if you're listening, it's literally right beside Kings Mountain.
Absolutely, it is.
Like the drive-in at Bessemer City is technically Kings Mountain, Bessemer City's old drive-in.
Right.
I mean, it's right there.
Yeah, so we sent you down there, and you've been there ever since.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny at the time because originally when you sent me, before I became the official worship leader, I was going to maybe come back a few times every few months to come lead worship. And it's never worked out.
No.
And which I'm thankful for that. Yeah,
they wouldn't let you come back.
I guess so.
Yeah. And so you have been writing songs for some time.
Right.
And somewhere in that process, you and I just came together and started trying to co-write. I remember we did one day with another friend of ours that we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And we've co-written almost every song for this project.
Yeah, literally like 7 or 8 of them?
Yeah,
probably?
yeah, absolutely. And so why write new songs for the church?
Well, my first response is I just think it's a command from the Lord, right? Through Psalms, he says, sing a new song to the Lord. Like constantly sing a new song.
Absolutely.
But then I think even spiritually in our relationship with Jesus, like it naturally happens, right? Like when Jesus saves us, we have a new song that he's given us in our hearts.
Yeah.
So there's the command, there's the natural instinct. Like I've got to do something for the Lord. Sing. But then I think about even generationally. Like there's another song we co-wrote on this album that it was kind of based off a older hymn, like 300 years ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I remember when we sat down and looked at this text, it was just overwhelming how beautiful it was, rich. But there were words in the song that like we had to get like a dictionary.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the words meant exactly what they meant.
Right.
For them.
But it was a different tongue for a different generation.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful. But like for us, like how do we make that 2020? How do you make it for this generation? And I think as we write new songs, we're the mouthpiece for a new generation for the glory of God.
Right. Yeah. Because we're putting words on people's lips as they come and they sing, which is important and a very humbling responsibility that we have.
Right.
But we want these lyrics to speak into lives, and we want to sing doctrine, but we want to sing it so that people understand it.
Right.
And so it's clear.
And, it's heavy, and it should be heavy, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, because you're putting words in people's mouths that they don't know how to express to God.
Right.
And what a joyful weight, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Joyful weight. I love that. So my song Forever, though, that specific song, I didn't co-write with you. You brought this as sort of a finished thing, although I know it morphed over time. So I'd love for you to tell people the story about how this came to be and when you started it and when you finished it, and walk them through that process.
So it's February of 2020 when we're recording this.
Right.
This song originated like in March of 2017.
Yeah, so a ways back.
Yeah, a long way back. And what I remember about the song is that I was just getting over the flu. I never had the flu in my life. Sick as a dog. I didn't have a voice. And for some reason, I was at my my grandfather-in-law's office
Right.
where he's let me study there for years through my schooling and
Right.
even afterwards getting ready for sermons and stuff. So for some reason I was over there probably preparing a sermon or something.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but anytime I need a rest or a break, I need to get away
Yeah.
and do something. So
Yeah.
there's a piano like 20 steps from his office.
Yeah.
Sat in front of the piano with my computer that day, and I was just having worship.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point in that process, I was just like, I would like to try to write a hymn.
Right.
Never at that point had
the
wrote a
form.
yeah, like never had a desire to, but I was like, it would be cool to try to write a hymn.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning process of my song Forever. And
Right.
even if you go back to the recording, the original one, the basis of like the first verse is there, the basic melody of the pre-chorus is there,
Yeah.
the chorus is there. But I just remember when I recorded it, my first thought with hymns was, it has to be rich, just like we were talking about a second ago.
Right.
Like hymns are historically very rich
Yes.
textually.
Absolutely.
But it needs to be singable.
Right.
So just come up with like the melody and so I recorded it. So
Right.
10 minutes in, I recorded this basic idea. Like a week later, I listened back and I hated it. I sounded horrible. Like I said, I was getting over the flu, but the song even today is at the very lower part of my register
Right.
as a voice. And then it's really high in the chorus.
Right.
And I hated how I sounded. And for that reason only, I was like, I don't want to mess with it anymore.
So you laid it down.
Yeah. So,
and then what made you go back to it?
So, we started writing for this project in September of that year because it was the week after we got back from our honeymoon.
Yeah.
And we wrote that first song. It was just this amazing moment of finishing.
Absolutely.
And I remember you saying, hey, we need to go back and maybe go back to some songs on the past that we've wrote. And if there's something there, let's bring it to the table.
Yeah.
And so I'm going through my phone, and because I had some other stuff I was working on, and I found this melody, and I was like, well, there might be something here, actually. It sounds cool.
Right.
So that just began the process. And a few months later, after working through the song, and
you brought it back to the table,
Yeah.
or brought it to the table,
Yeah.
I guess I should say. Yeah, what I love about this song, and there's so many things that I love about this one. It has a very revelation response between the verses and the chorus. So the choruses are very responsorial, if that's a word. I think that's a word. And then the verses are just theological statements. And but you have this repeated phrase, and I would love for people to think through this, hear it, and you explain it. So you always have something bursting through. You use that repeated line. What was your thoughts on that, and why did you come up with that? Why'd you write it?
Well, and like I said at the very beginning, like of explaining the song, I wanted to express deeper words.
Sure.
I'm from Bessemer City. I got a few degrees, but I'm still from Bessemer City. So, what are big words that would express who God is? And so I started just naturally. I started that creation.
Right.
That God is the one who created everything,
and
and just through the midst of just writing those first few words, that bursting through just kind of came. And I was like, that's really unique because I just don't know many songs with that word in it, bursting.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so when I came back to it in September, October, I was like, well, we need to stick with that thought.
Yeah.
So I just trying to craft the song creation, really love the expression that Jesus is the Word of God.
Right.
We don't hear that much in songs.
Right.
So through his breath, the world's formed. He speaks and things burst through and exist.
Yeah.
But then reflecting on Jesus, he comes to earth and he became a man.
Right.
It's intentional that
incarnation.
It's intentional that the song says the Son of Man instead of Son of God.
Right.
I did that just because Jesus had to be perfect in order to be the perfect sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so through his perfect sacrifice, the Father slain his Son for the sins of the world. And through that sacrifice, redemption's bursting through.
Right.
And then the third verse is the resurrection. Right.
The yet to come. Yeah.
That's it. And there's one of my favorite lines in the song is the third verse where it says that he was buried in creation's grave.
Yes.
Jesus is the one, he created it.
Yes.
And somehow the creation thought he could they could hold the God of life
Yeah.
down into creation. He created the grave.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he burst through, and then you couldn't stop there. Like
Yeah.
you had to have a verse about him coming back. And,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, yeah. So I mean,
and our producer really pulled that way down and then just explodes. And it's just such a great moment to think about all of those things culminating together.
Right. Right.
So I'm super excited about this song. We are singing it here now.
Yeah.
We just started. I know y'all have been singing it for
We've
a
been
while.
for a while. Yeah.
So we're singing it here, and people are responding and
That's awesome.
singing it, and we're excited to share it with other places, and hopefully other people will grab it and sing it. It's a great song, Micah.
Thank you.
And it is, again, the title cut. So
that's humbling. I mean,
yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, we're super excited, and there's more to come. So.